So good morning and welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming. It is 9 o'clock on a Tuesday, beautiful day outside, and I'm sure this is the place where you want to be in the morning on a beautiful day. So thank you for coming and thank you for electing to be here. We're going to talk about, hopefully we'll make this worth your while and demystify some AI stuff that's coming your way. It's coming everyone's way. And so thank you for coming and thank you for, wanting to be involved in this because it's a very hot topic and it's going to change the way you teach in the future, and it's going to change the way students learn. And but again, it's just a tool, and we're going to go through it and explain some stuff to you and explain how it works and so on and so forth. And hopefully you'll be able to get out of here with some new knowledge on how to use it within your classroom and how to use it in your lives too. Most of you might not know it already, but you might not know this already, but almost everybody's using AI in one way or another if you're using a smartphone or if you're using a computer. And we're going to go through that. But again, my name is Nick Gonzalez, and I'm here with Haruna. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, everybody. Good morning. Thanks for joining us. My name is Haruna Hosokawa, and Nick and I are both with the BPS Technology Department, and we'll be hosting this session today.
Great. And so, we're going to be splitting this up. Haruna and I'm going to be taking the first half, and Haruna's going to be taking the second. But if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to put it in the chat. We might ask you, sometime during the session to unmute yourself. But if you don't, but if you have a question, feel free to put it in the chat, and then one of us will get to it. And if not, we'll get to it later on in the day, maybe email you. All right, so let's get going. Okay, opening activity, yay. Which picture here describes your thoughts about AI now? What do you know about it? Which one of these 1 through 6 do you think it represents your feelings towards AI? And tell us why you chose it. Just put the number, number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and why you chose it. What is AI to you? What do you know about it? Which picture represents your feelings? Mm-hmm. Hey, Kevin. Right.
Seeing some 2s for excitement, 5s for unknowns. I completely agree. I'm personally in the 6 camp. I'm terrified.
I'm kind of number 2 because I really don't know what I don't know. So I'm just happy. It's fun to use. Okay, great. Okay, so lots of different opinions here. Yes, you can definitely, yeah, it will definitely help you write emails to anyone. Great, nice. Great. 4 for adventure. Great. Awesome. And we go, okay, great. And so I'm going to take this a bit. Thank you for letting us know. We want to just get a sense of where everybody was at going into the session so we could help you better, help you more, and hopefully we can get something out of this and we can tailor it more towards, the people who might have some questions. And this gave us a good litmus for where everyone's at right now. So 3 of these pictures are not real. So which ones do you think are not real? Go ahead and write the 3 numbers in the chat. 4, 5, 6. Okay. Oh, hey, Lewis. Right.
That's like a pretty good mixture, actually.
Yeah.
All right, so everybody took their last guess. I'm going to reveal the answers.
Yep. But let's get someone's opinions first. Let's ask people why they think. Let me ask
Okay.
person, okay? I'm just gonna go ahead and just pull out of the hat right here. So Derek Norman, can you tell us why you chose 1, 2, and 5? Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah, sure. I don't know. I think like two just kind of seemed like it was a little bit cartoonish in a way.
Okay.
One, I just figured it kind of looked like it was real, so that's probably why it's not. And then five just didn't look super real to me.
Okay. Okay. And I'm going to ask somebody else really quick. Great. Um, let's have Emily Silas. Why did you choose one, two, and five?
Good morning, everyone. I chose one, two, and five because it just looked like it would be easy to like superimpose the people on those backgrounds.
Okay. Very cool. Awesome. All righty. So go ahead. I'll do the drum roll, Haruna. Brrr.
So
Hey,
the correct answer is 1, 2, and 5.
all
And congratulations to all you got it, but congratulations also to people who didn't get it. It's okay. It is,
Got it.
this is just to illustrate how good AI is getting and how good these things are getting, that we really need to learn how to distinguish truth from not truth and be critical about what we see online. All right.
Great. So let's get into it. So just to let you know, do some housekeeping before we start the presentation. Okay, this meeting is captioned. So if you want to go and turn your captions at the bottom, they're there for you. I believe it should be right there at the bottom of your screen, but if not, you can click on more and they should be there as well. Please make sure you are muted. There's a lot of people in the class right now. So, if everybody starts talking, it's going to get really out of hand. It's going to get messy. So please have yourself on mute. And though, again, there might be times where I ask you to unmute yourself, but for the rest of the time, please have yourself on mute and add any questions you might have to the chat. And please make sure that your name is your name on Zoom and not a bunch of numbers or anything else. So make sure we can refer to you. I think everybody's pretty good with that though so far. It seems like it. And yeah, and if you can, please have your camera on. And yeah, great. So we can know you can see you. All righty. So let's go to the next one. So participants will be able to learn what AI is, how it works, and what AI and generative tools AI tools can be used for. We're going to talk about the limitations and concerns around AI. And we're going to discuss how AI might impact the classroom and ways you address it. So what is AI? That's the big question right now. And again, AI is short for artificial intelligence. There's a lot of different, there's a lot of different meanings. You're going to hear a lot of different things. And, and honestly, it's interesting. A lot of IT people explain artificial intelligence differently because there's so many different forms of artificial intelligence. But for the most part, for us here, it's a computer program or app that can perform tasks that typically require human intelligence. That's all you need to know. That's really, that's what it does. And, but again, you might hear different definitions of it from different people in the IT world or different places on the news and whatnot, but just know it's essentially just a program or app that can do tasks that require human intelligence right, on their own. And like I said a little bit earlier, we're all using AI in some way or form already. And not necessarily generative AI, which we're going to be focusing on today, but AI, machine learning. There's a lot of different types of AI. And so, and here are a couple examples. Right? Emails that are marked as important is AI. Facial recognition is AI. Chatbots are AI. Maps and navigation use AI. Netflix, yeah, and what it predicts you might like is AI. Language translation apps and language translation apps are actually where ChatGPT and some of the big generative AI apps come from. Bank fraud detection and digital assistants like Alexa or Siri, the Microsoft Dot, Google Home, all of that. That's all AI. But what are some AI examples of AI in education that you might be using already? So if you're using Grammarly, that's AI. If you're using read and write for Google, that's AI. MS Word uses AI, and it's been there for a long time. So if anyone's ever used like the text modifiers for different grade levels, that's AI. Google Docs uses AI. If you use an optical character recognition software, like that's AI, or Note, Microsoft Lens, Google Keep. Creating images from text, Canva, text to image, Dolly, that's AI. That's actually generative AI. We're going to be talking about that a little bit today. Speech recognition as well, Google voice typing, Zoom, the captioning on Zoom, Google Meet, auto captioning, that's all AI too. So if you didn't think you were using AI before, you're actually using it. Just not, some of the apps that you might readily think are AI, but a lot of apps that are out there are AI, and we don't even realize it. So we're going to be discussing mostly generative AI today. So the ChatGPTs, the Geminis, co-pilots. This is what we're going to be talking about specifically today. And it's a specific type of AI. Just like I mentioned earlier, AI is huge, and there are a lot of subdivisions of AI. And so we're going to be focusing specifically on generative AI because that's what's coming up in the classroom the most, right? And it's a type of AI designed to create content, right? I like, and mostly in the form of text and images, and it's based on vast amounts of data. Now, if you ever talk to a chatbot, through your phone or on a telephone, using your phone, or on your browser on your phone and whatnot, if you've ever communicate with a chatbot, that's a specific type of AI. If you're thinking about, for example, ChatGPT or Gemini and whatnot, just think of that as like a chatbot on steroids. It's really just a ramped up form of chatbot. And generative AI tools typically generate content in response to what's called a prompt that explains the user's needs. So you prompt an AI and it responds to you, right? So, some of the two that we're going to focus on for right now are ChatGPT and Gemini. And they're examples of, again, a generative AI chatbot, a program designed to simulate conversation with a human, right? So when you communicate with a chatbot, or we communicate with these two platforms, it's going to talk to you like it's as if it were like a human, right? It's not a search engine. We're going to get to that pretty soon, but it's almost like you're interacting with it. You're not necessarily just asking Google to search for something. And it simulates a conversation with a human, and a user prompts it and it responds to it. And this uses data from what's called a large language model, which learns from huge volumes of data to simulate natural language, and analyzes this data to predict and generate content. So again, it's all about language and this really, really big data set that it draws from in order to simulate human interaction. So this is how a large language model works, and this is how ChatGPT and Gemini work, right? So for example, you have once upon a, right? And then it'll go through all its vast amounts of language that's picked up from the internet to predict what the next word would be. And so, for example, the probability, it takes it into probability. So it looks at the largest percentage of words that come after each word. So in this case, once upon a, it picks up that once upon a time has been used 80% of the time in the data set. So it will predict once upon a time being the best, the most logical response to quote unquote prompt, right? It wouldn't necessarily be once upon a city because that doesn't come up all that much in the model. Or once upon a way, because that doesn't come up, it comes up hardly at all, right? And then, once upon a pizza, that doesn't really come up at all either. So again, it's not in the data set, so it's likely not, or doesn't appear that much in the data set. So it's likely not going to be the best word to use in this phrase of once upon a. So if you're wondering how ChatGPT and Gemini were developed, again, you have that large language model data set, which goes to the learning algorithm. Again, through this, it learns language, it learns conversation, it learns conversations that are human-like, and then it predicts. Again, thinking back to that once upon a time example. And so if you're wondering, again, how or what the difference between a search engine and an AI chatbot is, when you search something, for example, on Google, it's just going to come back with a search query or a search response that gives you everything that you asked, a list of websites and a list of online URLs that have the information that you requested. It's not going to interact with you, right? So and a lot of times Google has Google's algorithm determines which search response is going to come back, right? Which is going to be at the top, and what's going to be second, third, fourth, fifth, right? And so it's just going to come back with different URLs with information. Versus an AI chatbot, it's going to respond to you like a human, right? What time should I pack for a hiking trip? You could pack some hiking boots, blah, 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 right? So you're having a conversation with it as if it's a human. Very different from a search engine, again, because again, when you ask a search, when you do a search on Google or any other search engine, it's just going to come back with a bunch of URLs. It's not like that's not like a AI. AI is almost like you're interacting with a person. There are a lot of generative AI tools out there already. A lot of free one. There are a lot of them are free. And we'll get to what that means in a second. But the main categories for right now are text, video, image, and code. There are task-specific tools like lesson planners, presentation makers that can produce content in a specific format if you needed to, right? But many of the new tools use a ChatGPT engine. So a lot of tools will work off of the specific large language model that ChatGPT uses. So because it's so big and it's so popular. So many of them will run off of the same data set and same engine that ChatGPT runs off of. All right, so you can see in the graph you have, you can see in the graph you have speech, 3D design, research, text, video, image, and code. So I'm going to hand it over to Haruna right now, and she's going to show us how to do a specific demo, how to use Gemini essentially.
Yeah, so thanks, Nick. So I'm gonna jump right into a live demo of Gemini. If you would like to test it out yourself, you're gonna have to go to this link to enable it on your BPS account. It's not enabled for everybody by default. So I'm gonna put a link in the chat.
I'll get it, Haruna. I'll get it.
Okay, thank you. And that will make you join a Google group. And once you're part of the Google beta group, it will enable Gemini. You might need to refresh and join Gemini. But if you want to just follow along on the screen, that is fine as well. Now, Gemini is one of many different large language models that are out there. And ChatGPT being sort of the famous one that kicked off all this craziness about generative AI, since it was the first one that was released to the general public in November of 2022. But Gemini is another one, and this one is developed by Google. They all work on the same concept that Nick went over. So it all learns from a vast amount of text that's mainly on the internet, and then it analyzes all that text to look at probabilities and what the most likely outcome is. But each company does its little tweaking. So they use their own algorithm. They also use a slightly different data set. So you will get slightly different results depending on what you put in, which engine you use. We're going to use Gemini today just because it can also do image. So we can demo both the image and the text at the same time. ChatGPT's free version only does text at the moment. If you have the paid version, it can also do images. All right, so what I'm going to ask Gemini to do right now for me is to tell me how to make pizza. And again, if you type this into Google, what you might get is like links to all kinds of recipe sites and recipe blogs. But if I type this into Gemini, it will come up with, that was interesting. That has never happened before. I'm going to try it again. All right, so it's generating text. And again, it's made to sound a little human-like, so it doesn't just blurt out a response. It kind of gives you this introduction, gives you a little blurb about homemade pizza, then goes into the ingredients, sauce, toppings, and whatnot, and the directions. Now, one little thing about large language models is, again, everything works off of sort of probability. But there's also a little bit of randomness built into it. So if you ask the same question twice, you typically get a slightly different response. So if you don't like what you got the first time, you can always try again. What is happening? So you might get a slightly different response. Now, I don't know if you make pizza at home, but when I make pizza at home, I don't make my own sauce. I make my own dough, but I don't make my own sauce. And a lot of people don't make their own dough either, but they might make the sauce and vice versa. So we could ask it to modify this. So let's say, please modify to use store-bought dough and sauce. and it will do it for you. And again, it gives you the instructions. Now, this again is drawing from all kinds of knowledge on the internet. It does not go and actually like verify this recipe. It's just saying, okay, I'm seeing this keyword pizza, and 450 degrees is what I'm seeing as the most probable, temperature that shows up on the internet. And that's sort of how it's working. So it is up to you to verify that this is correct. If you ask for a recipe about a lesser known dish, you might get something that is totally, that may not come out properly if you follow this recipe. Now, fun thing about Gemini or ChatGPT is you can also do something like, please write a song about making pizza. And it can do it for you, which is really fun. And this is something beyond what Google might be able to do if you just type in the search. And it looks like people are trying different prompts I'm just looking at the chat. And yes, you could also have it include a picture, which is really fun. So let's do that. Let's say include a picture of the pizza. And it gives you a couple of different options. Actually, 4 different options in this case. So it can also generate images. And so you can definitely experiment with this a lot more. You could also do something like, can you teach a child how to make pizza? So you can change the audience in order to change the tone of the text. And I'm seeing a question about copywritten content. We'll get into that a little bit more. But again, this is all just made up by the AI, and it's not copying from some known song. It's just generating it as we go. And there's definitely ownership issues to that and questions about that. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on. All right, so I'm going to switch out of this live demo and hand it off to Nick again.
Thanks, Aruna. Yeah, those questions are going to pop up, and we're going to, we can dive deeply into them right now. But there's a specific section within the session that we're going to actually address that, because it is a big problem, and it's a big issue within AI. So copyright, who actually makes it, so on and so forth. So, and the interesting thing is no one actually does. So, but we'll get to that in a second. But before we get into that, we got to talk about how you talk to the different AI, right? How do you talk to the ChatGPTs and the Geminis, right? And because it's all about how you prompt it. Remember, prompting is asking it to do whatever you want to do. And there's an actual science to prompting, and there are jobs that, and roles out there within big companies that have that consider what's called prompt engineering to be a major skill, because understanding how to talk to an AI is real is it's not like talking to a human. Obviously, you have to be very, very detailed in the way in your prompts. If you don't ask it a certain way, it's not going to give you what you want. But if you do ask it a certain way, it will give you what you want and more. So prompt engineering is a process of designing prompts for a generative AI tool to produce the desired outcome. Right. It's an iterative process, right? So everybody starts out at a basic level, and then you build on it. You build and you build and you build, right? So sometimes you'll get to what you want by prompting multiple times, right? So it's an iterative process, and refining the more you refine your steps, the better the result you get. So a way to think about it is adopting what's called the PARTS strategy, PARTS. And parts is persona. So you identify your role. I am a blah, 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 or we are a blah, blah, blah. So I am a 46-year-old digital learning specialist for Boston Public Schools. And I would like to learn more about the iterative process of generative AI for a presentation that I'm going to do. My audience, is composed of teachers from around the country, K through 12 educators. And I want the tone to be academic in nature. And I want the structure to be in a 3-paragraph answer. And so persona, aim, recipients, theme, and structure. So if you stick to these, you'll get the response that you want, right? And it's going to be an iterative process as you start to use it more. The more the more beginner you are with it, the more iterations you're going to need. But as you get better using it, it'll start to work its way down, and you'll be able to master the parts strategy better, and you'll get what you want quicker. So again, and here's another example. I'm a 7th grade creative writing educator composing a class communication regarding expectations for students over the summer. The message should be about 75 words long and encourage students to establish a daily 30-minute writing schedule in preparation for the next school year. Write it with a professional, yet friendly and inclusive tone. The format is an email. Okay. That's using parts, right? So that's just for the text piece, right? When we start talking about generative AI using for images, right, it becomes a little different, right? So when the prompt engineering for visual and images, right, is you need to clearly describe your image, your desired image, and include details like the style of art. For example, Impressionist, Art Deco, a drawing, a comic book. The type of media. Do you want a painting? Do you want photo? Do you want graphic art? You have the mood, and the color scheme, sepia, neotone, black and white, so on and so forth. Framing, is it close up or zoomed out? Lighting, filtered sun, spotlight, etc. And then background, example, clear sky, right?
I
And so
just want to point out this little game here.
Sure.
You want to talk about it, Nick?
Yeah, actually, yeah. Do we want to throw it in the chat, Herna? I can do it. Want me to?
Yeah,
Or
I think we have time to have everybody try it out for like
yeah,
3
let's
minutes.
have everybody
Maybe.
try it out. I'll grab it.
So this is a little game to basically let you practice image prompting using Google's AI. And it is a little game. This is something you can also do with your students. And you can click on Launch Experiment when you get there. And I'm going to go ahead and jump in. And what it is, it'll show you a picture that's been generated by AI. And your task is to come up with a prompt that will generate an image that matches the picture. So this is an example. And it tells you to please include information about medium, subject, and context. That's kind of a hint. So let's see what we get. Oh God, I don't like this one. This one's a really hard one. I've played this before. This one's one of the harder ones to get an accurate picture, but let's I don't even know what I should type in here. I forgot what I did before. Let's say gradient from pink to green with green on top. Let's see what we get. All right, so it's telling me that I got enough of a match. It's a 69% match, so it lets me go to the next one. So you can play with this, and again, it really gets you to be specific about what you ask for, and also kind of observe the picture and put into words what you're seeing.
Do you want to give him about 5 minutes to play with this?
Sure. Let's do 3 minutes.
Sure. Okay, folks. So come back at so we'll get started again at about 8:34, 35. I'm sorry, 9:34.
Then you're getting a blank white screen. I don't know. I have not seen that issue before.
Yeah. Jen, are you using Chrome or Safari or something else? Try closing your Chrome. Try closing your Chrome out and reopening it. That might help. Marina, can you check out? Can you move back to the slide with the criteria on it? Thanks.
And this is a game you can do with your students too. And if they're practicing how to be descriptive or how to put what you see into words, this is a nice little practice. And then it's also kind of fun since it's a game. And it gets really hard as you move on. This is hard. Yes, it is.
Yeah,
It's
it
harder
is.
than you think. There are some pictures in here that are harder than others. There's a few that's like you can get it right away, and then there's some that are really hard. I think I got up to like level 3 and it was really hard.
Yeah, we thought kids would like it.
And it's really a nice introduction to image generation. And we'll talk about some other image generation tools later on that students can use, but this is the one that really gets them to practice what to say in the prompt. Yes, and you can tie it into other descriptive languages too, like characters. So
yeah. And it's great to see the overlap between art and language arts here too as well, because you have to master one to get to the other and vice versa. So it's great overlap between different content areas. All righty. Okay, so feel free to bring that back to your class with you. And obviously, it's a great way to practice, especially when when you start using some of the content creation, image generation AI. It's again a really good practice to for you to start prompting using the tool. All righty, so let's go to the next part, Herna, if we can. So some generative AI concerns and limitations. And so have already been a couple questions in the chat regarding this. And so we're going to spell out some of the stuff that we have already. So one of the things that's different between a search engine and AI is that, well, even with search engines, you have to do this. You really have to fact check and double check your work here because, especially if you're asking it for certain things, you're asking it, for example, you want historical content, or if you want, for example, or even a recipe that what you want before you get it, right? Or you have an idea, because sometimes you'll get stuff that's way off. There have been instances where Karina did the same exercise asking how to make pizza, and it called for super glue. And so you really have to be able to check that and fact check your stuff your prompt responses after you prompt them. You have to know your stuff. Because again, it's not like a search engine. It's not going to give you the information that you think, that you need all the time. So you have to be able to check it out. And we have an article, and we have various articles that you can check, that you can read that address some of the points that we're going to bring up. There's bias. And so, the people, the engineers and developers who create this app, don't necessarily have backgrounds in humanities, or in social sciences or in political science or anything like that. And a lot of them are just, have a background in developing. And so some of the algorithms have bias in it, clear bias. There have been image generators that come back with really, inappropriate content. For example, when we first started using this, I asked to show an, I prompted a image generation app to show me to show a picture or to make a picture of an American family, and the entire family was white. And these are the type of issues that you deal with when it comes to image generation. Too, you have a lot of a bias within the text content that comes back as well. Think about the developers and engineers, again, not necessarily in tune with some of the more up-to-date topics that are in the narrative. So you have to, again, know your content, know your response before you actually get to it, because sometimes they'll come back with some really bad content.
Yeah,
and
and
this,
it's not really always the fault of the engineers and the programmers, but just the training data itself is biased because it takes all this historical information.
Mm.
So if the majority of pictures of scientists are white males on the internet, then that it takes on that bias.
right.
So these two articles that are linked in there, we're not going to click into it, but take a look at when you have time. These are both about image generations and how biased some results could be for image generators if you ask it to generate images of, like, for example, a scientist or an image of an American person, and the type of results you get. And it's really based on, a lot of it is based on what data it's being trained on from all this historical information that are on the internet.
I also have to think about its inability to follow logic. There's been some issues with math involved. I know it's getting better, but Haroon's going to is going to show you an example of how some of the problems that we've had with AI. It doesn't really do math all that well yet. It's getting better, but it's still not there. So here's a problem that came up with math with ChatGPT. So you can see, like, to make 24 using the numbers 1, 2, 7, and 20. So yeah, 13 plus 7 equals 24.
13 plus 7 is definitely not 24.
No, not last time I checked. Yeah. And yes, Jen, yeah, it looks like Jen DiSarcina came across this problem when she was using ChatGPT. She says math is often wrong.
Yeah, also with like logic problems. So if you know those logic puzzles, like you have two sheeps and like three sheeps and three wolves on one side of the river, and you need to get them across and that kind of stuff. If you give it those, it tends to get it wrong, but it'll sound convincing.
Yeah.
So it'll sound like it's making sense, but if you actually read into it, it wouldn't be making sense. So you really have to, again, look and fact check the response.
Some of the AI generated images tend to lack precision, lots of blurriness in some areas, right? And especially when it comes to people, you'll have extra limbs sometimes in the busy areas, and sometimes not even in the busy areas, but you'll see sometimes you'll see 6 fingers, sometimes you'll see additional earlobes, or very pronounced foreheads, so on and so forth. So it's not some of the images aren't that precise, so you have to look them over and make sure that if you're going to use an image, that you might have some of these problems with it. So we got a question from Joanna. How different is AI photo prompts from searching Google Images? So when you search for Google image, it's going to give you everything that's online already. It's just going to go through the online and scrape some of the pictures and bring it back to you, right? But with AI, it's going to make one. It's going to make an image for you. So that's one of the biggest differences. Maria, did you have anything else to say about that one?
No, I think that is the major difference. It's whether it's searching through an existing, bank of images, which some of them could be AI generated.
Yeah.
But if you prompt the AI image generator, it'll make it on the spot. And again, it's based on probability. It knows that, okay, if it's asking for a person, then this is sort of what it looks like. But it's basically just predicting what it should look like based on your prompt.
And so the knowledge base is limited by training data. So for example, if you're using ChatGPT, the free version of it, it's working from a model from 2021. Okay. And I know that's moving. Maybe it's moved a little bit since we came up with this training. I don't think it has though, but it's working from a model that was taken out 2021. So you're not going to get the most recent data that's out there. It won't be able to answer questions post 2021 all that well.
Yeah, that's only for the free version though. If you have the
Yeah.
paid version or Gemini, it's more up to date
It's
with the
up-to-date.
training data.
I believe Copilot too. And lack of citation in sources. So I don't know if anybody's come across this yet, but in ChatGPT, Runa mentioned this a little bit earlier. If you're asking ChatGPT to come back with content, especially academic content, it sometimes will, and if you ask it to cite academic content, it will come back with citations, but the citations are completely fabricated. It does not do that well at all, but it will sound incredibly convincing, and the academic content that it pulls and the citations that it pulls sound really convincing as well. Don't trust them. So it's not working from that model. There are some AI models that are coming out that do better with that, but as of right now, if you're using ChatGPT, the citations aren't real, so don't trust it. Gemini, I believe, is a little bit better. I don't know if you have anything to say about that, Runa, but I
Yeah,
know.
so Gemini has the ability, where is my Gemini? Here it is. If you click on this Google icon here, it kind of looks through the responses generated and tries to look for supporting evidence on Google for you. Wait a minute. So it tries to double check response. It didn't do that well with the verse, but so for example, if I click on this for the pizza recipe, it might come up with a recipe site that matches what it generated. So it can kind of come up with a source, and maybe not so much for the pizza one, but it does kind of give you a link to a website that might support its whatever it generated. Or if there's any contradicting information, that'll pop up as well. But that's a Gemini feature. ChatGPT will not do that.
Let's look at another question. Does the free version of Gemini let me upload PDFs the same way GPT does? That's from Stephen.
That's a good question. I have not tried that yet.
I haven't tried it either. But Stephen, we'll get back to you about that.
I only ask because I get around the citation issue by just uploading the scholarly article to it. Like if it's something I'm interested in playing with the kids.
No, I think it's enough. All righty.
All right, one more.
I don't see it at the bottom. Is there one more?
Yeah.
It's not showing up on mine. Sorry.
Oh. So it's basically this idea of AI model collapse. It's a pretty new concept of the limitation of AI. So when AI is fed with its own information, so basically like multiple iterations of same generated content, it tends to start kind of breaking apart. You can think of it as like AI inbreeding, you know, kind of like just like in genetics, you know, the bias and all these slight inaccuracies gets multiplied, and it will eventually collapse. The model will not work as well. So there's been studies done saying that AI models that have been fed with AI generated content does not starts to lack accuracy. So it is definitely a limitation, especially as more and more online content becomes AI generated. It's a concern that we should be thinking about.
So Haruna, the prompt response just doesn't come back, right? If that be the case.
Right, like it does. Well, in your own little model, I think it's okay, but like overall, if the training data is filled with AI data and you do multiple generations of that, then it starts to not work as well. So this is kind of an issue more in the future when a lot of the internet gets saturated with AI content, and that's also used for the training information.
Okay, so let's get to the ethical concerns, right? It makes it easier for people to create deepfakes and misinformation, right? So again, you know, cybersecurity was an issue before this. Now it's an even bigger issue because content can get pumped out constantly by chatbots and by AI. You know, the amount of time it would take to make a phishing email or to make some disinformation, you know, extrapolate and think about you could do that in times 10 now, or times 100, where you can just make all this misinformation, disinformation dispersed online on an exponential scale. And so stuff will get out really quickly, especially manipulative tactics. And, and you have to think about that when it comes to the election season coming up. The AI is going to really have a role within our next election coming up, especially when it comes to social media. Harmful bias, and we talked about this a little earlier. Some of those algorithms will generate really inappropriate, insensitive information. And and I bring this back to us as teachers. I'm sorry. I bring this back to us as teachers and educators. I keep hearing, I heard this before, but I hear it even more now. AI is going to take our job. It's not actually. It's actually going to make us even more important, because we're going to be the ones that have to sift through all the stuff that comes out as a result of it, and let our students know, hey, this is wrong. This type of content is not right. It's incorrect. You have to check your facts. You have to critically think about certain things. And so again, the harmful bias that can be produced as a result of AI is definitely formidable, and we as teachers need to be able to address that. So content ownership too. Who owns the training data, and who owns the created content? So when it comes to this as well, you have to think about AI. It's working from a large amount of data, right? It's not working from one person's, it's working from everyone's. And so who owns the data when it comes to this? And who owns the responses that come out of it? Because it works from such a large language model, people get into this, it's a really huge gray area, because at one point, no one's created it. And at one point, everyone's created it. So there's this toss-up between who owns what. Right? And there have been inquiries into this, because there are a lot of groups within the United States that don't want to have their information to be entered into the large language model. And we're going to get into this in the privacy concerns and the data concerns. If you use ChatGPT, if you use Gemini, it's like you using social media. The information that you put into it, it collects and uses. Right? Remember, we have this saying in cybersecurity: when you get a free app or use a free product, you're not paying for the product, you are the product. And it's the same thing that goes for some of these free AI platforms. If it's free, they're going to be using your data. So you have to approach it in the same way that you approach social media or any other app that and you using your sensitive information. So
I'm going to stop you 1 second before the next bullet point. There's a hand up. Adina?
Sure.
Hi, I have a question. I'm looking where it says harmful bias TED Talk.
Sure.
So I've heard a lot of TED Talks during PDs and stuff. So are you telling me the stuff that I'm hearing is biased, but it was good information that has to deal with education and speakers that I really enjoyed hearing. So I'm like, are they saying TED Talk is harmful?
Oh, no. That is a link to a TED Talk that talks about harmful bias in AI. Yeah. No, we love TED Talk.
Okay.
Continue using them.
Yeah, they're great. Yeah, this is just some resources for you to use that address the specific topic that we're talking about, the specific bullet point. But thank you for pointing that out. All righty, let's go to the next one. And yeah, again, who is responsible for decisions made by the AI? Who, because again, you for example, OpenAI owns ChatGPT, so are they responsible for the actions of a ChatGPT and the outcomes of ChatGPT? Who is responsible for the decisions? Is it the data set? Is it the programmer set? So this is again a big gray area that people are that has produced a lot of problems that people don't know how to deal with. And so these are some ethical concerns that have come up as a result of responsibility for the AI. And the environmental impacts of AI too. So it uses a lot of internet data, and it uses a lot of electricity. And so I know, Haruna, I know you can talk about it a little bit more because of the water, some of the cooling that needs to be done in servers. Can you explain? Because I have it, but
yeah,
you know a little better than I do.
Yeah, so AI uses a lot of computing power. And a lot of these data centers are built in parts of the world where water is rather scarce, like in the middle of nowhere. And they use up a lot of water and electricity to run these data centers. Water is typically used for cooling these data centers. So there's a lot of environmental impacts that we don't even see. And there are some numbers that are like, if you every time you generate one image, it takes just as much electricity as charging your phone fully once. But multiply that by the millions of people using it, and that amounts to a lot of electricity, a lot of water. And it's really, whose environment is it harming, right? Is it the people who are using it, or is it the people who are living in that area where these data centers are put in, or people who also need to share that water? So it's a lot to think about, and a lot of the environmental impacts are not visible to us. So it's just something to consider as you're using these tools.
Right. But when you were speaking, I'm sorry to interrupt. When you were speaking, it just made me think about, it was on the news a while ago, but at a school that a teacher was using the school electricity to generate the energy that is needed for an underground AI that he was doing at his school. I saw it on the news. That
Oh, wow.
it just brought back that memory, and he got busted.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
That's an interesting one. I haven't heard of that one yet.
And yeah, for the next topic, or the next bullet point, who's benefiting from AI and who's being harmed, right? You know, in the future, it's not going to be a question of whether students use AI or not, because they are, especially the younger kids who are going to be growing up in it. It's going to be a question of who uses AI better. And in much the same way that people have benefited and been impacted by the digital divide, this is going to contribute to it as well, by a lot. And so we have to really think about, again, the digital divide and the digital gap that develops as a result of AI. People who use it better and people who use it worse, and people don't have access to it all. In much the same way that people have access to it throughout the world, the people who have access to technology and the people who don't, there's obviously a correlation between the people who use technology and wealth and socioeconomic status, versus the people who are poor and don't have access to it. And so this is going to contribute to it even more. And the role of government and policymakers in this. How important, how much of a role are they going to be able to play in this with the institution of AI, and how they're going to implement in the different sectors of government. And so, where are they going to be, or how are they going to have a hand in it, and how are they going to be able to relate to some of the big tech companies that often don't see eye to eye with big government? And from there, I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Haruna. She's going to go ahead and take us home. She's going to be talking about how you're going to use it in the classroom.
All right, thanks, Nick. So we're going to kind of shift focus a little bit now. So now we all have a common understanding of generative AI and the different concerns around it, and how we can, how they're used. And we're going to talk a little bit more about what does this mean for the K through 12 classroom, and what does it mean for you. So there are kind of two sides to this. One is teaching with AI. So, what do you need to consider when your students are using AI, and how can you shift your teaching to incorporate it? Or when does it make sense to use it and when does it not? And what kind of things do students need to know about AI before they use it? And how can students develop these skills with AI? And then there's also teaching about AI. And this might be more relevant for computer science teachers or technology teachers, but it's also relevant for all of you. Because if you're going to have students use AI, they need to understand what it is and how to use it, and what the limitations are as well. So they also need to know how it works, what the concerns are, how it might impact the society, and all of this. So all of this needs to be almost discussed with the students before they can use AI in the classroom. And this final bit too, what is cheating? What does it mean to be cheating? And is using AI cheating? That's another big question that we're gonna talk about in a little bit. So we, as a BPS, we do have guidance on use of artificial intelligence. I'm gonna click on this. And this is a guidance. It's not a policy, it's a guidance. And there's a distinction to it. because policy is a little bit more firm and it needs to go through school committee and all of that. Guidance is more like best practices, right? So we would like you to take a look at this, but we're also looking for feedback on this as well. And there are guidance around using it as a learner. So this is meant for students, and also as a teacher. So this is you as a teacher and also as an employee. So if you're a teacher using it for professional use, or a central office employees. So it's coming at it from 3 different angles, and there are different bullet points for that. And I'm gonna focus on this one. But as a teacher, you want to definitely think about posting your expectations, talk to your students. Another important thing is fact check everything that comes out of AI, considering usage terms. So there's all these different things to consider if and when you're using AI. And same thing with if you're coming at it from an employee sort of professional use standpoint. So take a look at this guidance, and we are definitely open to feedback, but that's what we have so far in terms of district level guidance for use of AI. Now, we also want students to be aware of the code of conduct and acceptable use policy if they're using AI. So things like academic honesty, that is in part of the code of conduct, and that's something else to consider as well if you're allowing the use of AI in your class.
I kind of just, if that's okay, I just want to dovetail on that really quick, Karina. The concept of originality is changing, and every classroom is different, it seems like, and teachers are different too as well in terms of what they consider plagiarism and what they don't consider plagiarism. And so it's something that we've had at OIT, and my team has had to deal with consistently for the last 1.5 to 2 years with ChatGPT. And so just understand there's no consensus yet as to what is considered plagiarism and what isn't considered according to BPS. And that's up to you at the school level to decide. Again, it's just a tool for right now, and it's a very powerful tool, but again, it's up to you to determine what plagiarism is and the extent to which your students are going to be able to use ChatGPT or any other AI.
Thanks. All right, and one important piece that we definitely want to stress is to not share any student information or even staff information, no personal information on any AI engine, to err on the safe side. So no names, school names, ID numbers, birthdays, all of those do not go in there. And there are AI tools that will help you with IEPs, for example, but you definitely don't want to put a student name in there. If you can use it, but you want to use fake names, fake numbers, fake birthdays, and then insert it later on. That would be fine. And you also want to be careful about uploading PDFs or uploading any other document that you may use in the AI. Make sure all those personal information are not included in there. And this goes for students too. If students are using AI, they need to know to not put any of these information in there as well. We do have some generative AI tools that are in Clever already. So ChatGPT and Gemini are 2 of the text engines that are already in there. Canva and Adobe Express are good for image generation. And a lot of teachers probably use Canva or Adobe Express already for having students make graphical artwork or posters or brochures or whatnot. And there are text-to-image tools built right into that. If you use Padlet is another fun one. You can do image generation right in Padlet. Magic School is a fairly newish tool that is basically text generating AI tool that's been specifically designed for educators. So it can do things like differentiate a lesson or come up with a lesson plan or generate ideas for an icebreaker, or there's all these different tasks that are commonly done by teachers. And that can be accessed through Clever as well. And we're not going to get into it. We have separate sessions actually this week on Magic School if you are interested, but definitely something to explore. ChatGPT has this privacy policy, and part of it is this age restriction. So it is not meant for students under the age of 13. And for students who are older than 13, but under 18, so basically most of our middle and high school students, it requires you to have consent from parent or guardian. So be careful when you're using ChatGPT. If you're modeling it in front of the class, with whole class, with you interacting with the tool, then that would be okay. But if students are directly interacting with the tool, if the student's under 13, then it's a no-go. And if they're between 13 and 18, you still need a parental consent. So keep that in mind. And Gemini for students currently is not intended for students under 18 as well. So basically, for students, text generators are, are not really readily available at the moment. Magic School has a tool for students to interact with AI, and that would be fine as but you definitely want to check these privacy policies. Now, that doesn't mean your students are following these age restrictions and staying away from these tools at home. You probably know that. But if you're going to use it as a class, you need to be aware of these policies. Now, when we talk about AI use in the classroom, a lot of teachers might just say, no AI, period. But it's actually not such a black and white decision. There's a gradient. There's a whole range of different ways to use, to go from AI, fully AI, to being fully human. And it's not just a clear-cut line. So for example, this gradient shows, between completely human, which is student did not consult any AI and wrote the whole assignment, to a completely AI response, which is the student just pasted the assignment description and got the AI to write it and submitted that. There's a whole range in between. So student could have just consulted the AI for ideas, but then wrote the assignment themselves. Or the student maybe wrote the main ideas, AI generated the draft, and then the student revised, edited, modified, and then submitted. So there's a whole range of things that could happen in between. And this is where your role comes in and the importance of you setting a guideline for students. It's also important because AI tools are becoming more and more embedded in everything, that it's becoming hard to avoid it altogether. So if you tell a student you can't use AI at all, and then they happen to use Google and Google uses AI, is that cheating now? Because they used a little bit of AI that they didn't know that they used. So you want to make sure you set up clear guidelines. And we have 10 more minutes left. So let's do a couple of hopefully scenarios. So
just to say build on what you said, Haruna, like when you Google something now, for the most part, most searches that come back have an AI response to them, and that you get before you actually get to what it returned. And so, yeah, kids might not be using AI, thinking they're using AI, but they're using it anyway. And it's just something to think about. And also really do consider the idea of the gradient, because it's not a zero-sum game. It doesn't have to be either or, right? You can again, it's just a tool. You can use it in your classroom, but you don't have to use it all the time. Obviously, I mean, it's just a tool. It's not going to replace a teacher.
all right, just to make sure we finish on time, I'm going to skip the first scenario and move on to scenario number 2. So let's consider this particular scenario. So there's a student named Jacob, and there is a civics assignment to write a letter to his local government official to advocate for a community issue. And Jacob is an avid bike rider and decides to write about safer bike lanes. Now, his views are mostly shaped by his personal experience, so he decides to ask ChatGPT for more diverse views on bike lanes and understand both sides of the issue. And then after using ChatGPT to research the issue, he identifies few pros that he feels are more relevant to him and his local community, and asks ChatGPT to write a letter to support bike lanes using those bullet points. He proofreads the letter, adds some specific local examples to complete the letter. Now, in this particular example, do you think was this an okay use of ChatGPT? Or maybe which part of ChatGPT use do you think was okay or not? So think about that and respond in the chat. So in this case, he used the ChatGPT twice, one to ask for more diverse views on bike lanes to understand both issues, and another one to write the letter of support, like write the first draft. So okay to use for the research, okay for getting more info. It's okay until he asked it to write it for him. Concerned with the accuracy of the research. And there's a hand up, Elsa. Oh, that's all right. So it seems like most of you are saying it's okay to use it for the research as long as he fact checks it and so there's some concerns around accuracy, but the writing the letter itself, it may have been better to do it himself. So in this case, if a teacher had said no AI whatsoever, he would have cheated. Well, this would have been considered cheating. But if the teacher had a guideline, and in this case, maybe it was okay to use for research, but you need to fact check, then it may have been okay. So again, there's this whole like gradient to what is considered AI use in the classroom, and a blanket statement saying no AI really limits what happens. And this could have been a learning experience for him too. He could have learned a lot from this research that is in ChatGPT. So you want to keep that in mind as well. If the student is actually, is there a question? I just got accidentally unmuted. Cheryl, do you have a question? No. All right, so I'm going to skip the next few scenarios, but feel free to read them on your own and think about it. And again, there are no right or wrong answers to these scenarios. It's just something for you to think about as you consider creating your own guideline for students, and what might be some cases where students might try to use ChatGPT and what's acceptable for you and what's not. So this article here that is linked in here is it really gets into what are things that you need to consider when you're addressing AI in your classroom. So first bullet point here, you want to think about why the student might be tempted to use AI. It might just be novelty. They might want to just try it. They might be lazy, but it could also be things like they're feeling really pressured to get a good grade, or really pressured for time. And that's something you can think about in your course design, right? Like how much of a high stakes essay, how your grading policies might affect their motivation to use AI. If they're allowed to rewrite something, is that going to deter them from using AI or relying on AI too much? So that's something to consider. And also, thinking about pressure for time, maybe if you broke down the assignment into smaller steps so they won't be kind of procrastinating and feeling the time pressure at the end. Also, you really need to think about how you might be able to identify AI text. So there are supposed AI text detectors out there, but they do not work. They're not reliable. And you really should not be relying on them to identify AI written work, because they raise a lot of false positives. So they will label a lot of student written text as AI generated. And a lot of them would flag it based on the probability again. So if you're writing, it's similar to what is the most probable next word, then it tends to flag it as AI. And guess what? Our English language learners, because they're learning the language, they are going to use some of those most likely words, because that's what they've heard. And so AI detectors have been flagged as being biased towards English language learners, and you definitely want to keep that in mind. And you also want to have a policy for what you're going to do if you suspect a student for using AI. And you definitely don't want to like fail them right away, but give them some way to assess that they're actually, they were actually writing it and they actually understand the content. And one of the examples given to us by a BPS teacher was that they they suspected a student of using ChatGPT for an essay, but you would go back to them with an oral question and question them about what's actually in the essay. Ask them what this word means, ask them what the vocabulary means, ask them what's actually in the essay. And if they are actually understanding the content, then most likely they wrote it themselves. So you basically, want to make sure you have a policy of what's going to happen if their text is not either flagged or you suspect them as using AI. And addressing AI in your course design and expectations. So again, coming up with some sort of a guideline, a clear guideline on when it's okay and when it's not okay to use AI. And this might be something that'll change from assignment to assignment, depending on the learning goals and the product that you're looking for. Designing AI-resistant assignments. So some assignments are more prone to ChatGPT use than others. So, a simple essay that's just more fact-driven is really easy to create on ChatGPT. But if you incorporate different things that are not, different sources that are not in ChatGPT, or ask students to reflect on a specific incident that happened in the classroom or specific discussion you had in the classroom, AI doesn't know what happened in your classroom. So that would be a little bit more challenging to replicate. Pencil and paper discussions. There are a lot of different ways you can incorporate different assignments that are more AI resistant. Nick, did you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I mean, I have to kind of agree with you in terms of it not knowing your immediate surroundings. Not only does it not know your class, but it doesn't know your school, and it doesn't know what's happening in around your local environment. Well, not yet, at least. So you can actually go outside to like the schools or the shops or something around your local environment, around your school, and it won't pick up on any type of assignment that you've assigned regarding that. And yeah, definitely a big fan of oral debates. Anything oral is great. And then yeah, using that old school paper and pencil. It does wonders in class writing.
All right, we have 2 minutes left. And also think about how AI could be used to improve student learning. So things like using it for research or having AI generate something and having students fact check. So using it as part of the learning process rather than a source for plagiarism and cheating. That's also encouraged as well. And that also helps build student skills in using AI. All right, this is just really quickly, this is a sample guideline that was posted on Twitter from Ditch That Textbook. And, this is something visual, simple that you could post in your classroom. You may not exactly agree with these red and the green light, depending on what your assignment is, but just an example of how you might be able to verbalize and express these guidelines to your students. There is another link on the notes section of the slides with more examples of these types of visuals. So take a look at that. These are, again, some examples of alternative assignments that are more AI resistant. I am not going to get into these because we are out of time. So these are some resources for teaching about AI, so more about how AI works, and some of the teaching that you could do to students to have them understand more AI works. And all of these lessons are free and available for all of you to use. And we also have a resource document down here that we put together for different tools and different sites and resources that you could take a look at for generative AI. And I apologize for keeping you late, but I do have a feedback form that I would like you to all fill out. And we're going to use this as part of the attendance so that if you attend more than, so that we could give you the credit for the PD hours. And if you attend more than 10 hours, you will also receive PDPs. So please make sure you fill out the feedback form.
Just posted it.
Thank you. So apologize again for going over time. Actually, I'm not over time yet, but we will be around for a couple more minutes to take any questions that you might have. But otherwise, I hope to see you in some other sessions and hope you're enjoying your summer and have a wonderful day.
Yeah, folks, thank you for coming. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
This is Seneca King.
Seneca.
I cannot access the
Gen-
feedback form right now because there's something on my computer that refuses to go away. So I might have to close it down and then try to.
Okay. Do you have the slide deck?
No.
It's okay. Let me post the slide deck link again. And it's in the last slide on the deck.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Samantha, I just posted the link to the slides, and the recording, I believe, will be in the Zoom event. Right, Nick?
Yes, it will. It will.
I think it will be at some point. It needs to finish rendering and we'll be posting it.
So I just wanted to be sure about the name of this this webinar. What is it called, please?
This one is called Demystifying AI.
Oh yeah, okay, all right. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so if there's no other questions, I'm gonna close this off.
I have a quick question.
Oh, yeah.
Are these repeated? Are the course repeated if you miss one? Like I know there was another one that started at 9 also. Can you it's Cassandra, hi.
Oh, is that Cassandra?
Yeah, it's me.
Hey,
Hi.
Cassandra, how you doing?